Steve Jobs was only 30 years old when his world collapsed. He had built Apple from a small garage with a vision of changing the world. In less than a decade, Apple became one of the fastest-growing companies in history. But success also brought pressure, politics, and conflict inside the company. Jobs, known for his intensity and perfectionism, often clashed with Apple's board and executives. The disagreements grew louder, the tensions higher. And then in 1985, the unthinkable happened. Steve Jobs was fired. Fired from the company he co-founded. Fired from the dream he had built with his own hands. The news shocked the business world. How could a company remove its founder? For Jobs, it was more than losing a job. It was losing his identity. He later said, "I was out and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone." Most people would have disappeared quietly after such humiliation. But not Steve, because even at his lowest moment, a fire was still burning inside him. And that fire would lead to the greatest comeback in business history. After being fired from Apple, Steve Jobs could have given up. But instead of quitting, he chose to rebuild. In 1985, he founded a new company called NeXT, a bold attempt to design the most advanced computers the world had ever seen. NeXT machines were beautiful, powerful, and incredibly expensive. The company struggled to make a profit, but Jobs wasn't finished. Around the same time, he purchased a small, struggling animation studio from filmmaker George Lucas. The company was called Pixar. Most people doubted the move. Animation was risky, and Pixar was nearly bankrupt. But Jobs believed in their vision. He poured millions of his own dollars into the studio, betting everything on their technology and creativity. These years of exile were lonely and uncertain, but Jobs later admitted that being fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to him, because it forced him to think differently and start building again. Pixar's early years were anything but magical. They were burning through money and had no hit product. Jobs had already invested millions of his personal fortune, but the company was still struggling to survive. Many believed Pixar would fail, but Jobs never stopped believing. He knew that great things take time, and that the world was ready for a revolution in storytelling. Then came their breakthrough, the first ever fully computer-animated feature film, Toy Story. When it premiered in 1995, audiences were amazed. The film didn't just succeed, it changed the movie industry forever. Pixar became an overnight sensation, and Jobs' gamble finally paid off. He became a billionaire. But for Jobs, Pixar was more than money. It was proof that creativity, technology, and belief could transform the impossible into reality. What no one realized at the time was that the lessons Jobs learned at Pixar would prepare him for the biggest comeback in business history. While Pixar was making history, NeXT was quietly building the future. Jobs and his small team created a computer that was sleek, elegant, and years ahead of its time. Its software was powerful, its design was beautiful, but there was one problem. It was too expensive. Businesses and schools couldn't justify the price, and NeXT's sales were weak. From the outside, NeXT looked like another failure. But behind the scenes, the technology they were building was revolutionary. By the mid-1990s, Apple was struggling. The company was losing money and direction, desperate for a lifeline. And in a twist of fate, Apple looked to the man they had once fired. In 1997, Apple acquired NeXT for $429 million. And with that deal, Steve Jobs returned to the company he had created. He was no longer the young visionary they had fired. He was wiser, stronger, and he was ready to change the world again. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the company was weeks away from collapse. The once great innovator had become slow, confused, and buried under too many products. Investors had lost hope. Customers had moved on. But Jobs returned with a clear vision: simplify, focus, and inspire. He cut unnecessary projects, streamlined the company, and reignited a culture of innovation. Then came the products that changed everything. First, the iMac, bold, colorful, and unlike anything else on the market. It didn't just sell computers. It sold the idea that Apple was back. Then the iPod, then iTunes, and finally the iPhone, a device that redefined technology and changed how the world communicates. Each product carried Jobs' philosophy: technology should be simple, elegant, and human. In just a few years, Apple went from near bankruptcy to becoming the most valuable company in the world. The rebel had returned, and this time he was unstoppable. Steve Jobs didn't just build products, he built experiences. He believed technology wasn't just about circuits and screens, it was about people. Every Apple product had to feel intuitive, almost magical. It had to connect with the heart, not just the mind. Jobs often said, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works." Under his leadership, Apple stores became more than shops. They became places to explore, to touch the future. Marketing wasn't about specs, but about stories. Apple didn't sell devices, it sold inspiration. Jobs believed that technology should empower creativity, bring joy, and even a sense of wonder. This vision, beyond numbers, beyond profits, is what transformed Apple from a company into a cultural phenomenon. It was never just about computers or phones. It was about changing the way people live, work, and dream. In 2003, Steve Jobs received news that would change his life forever. He was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. At first, he refused traditional treatment, hoping his strict diet and determination could save him. But the disease would not wait. Even as he faced his own mortality, Jobs kept working, creating, and inspiring. He appeared on stage, thinner each year, introducing products that would shape the future. He gave one of the most powerful commencement speeches ever at Stanford in 2005, reminding graduates, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." Jobs knew that every day was borrowed time, and he poured that urgency into his work and his company. His battle with illness was private, but his message to the world was clear: innovation, passion, and courage outlived the person who sparked them. Even as his life neared its end, Steve Jobs' influence had only just begun. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. The world mourned not just a businessman, but a visionary who reshaped the way we live, work, and dream. From a garage in California to the stages of the world, his journey was anything but easy. He was fired, doubted, and counted out. But he never stopped creating, never stopped believing. Jobs turned failure into fuel and setbacks into the foundation for greatness. Today, Apple stands as a symbol of his vision, a reminder that one person's ideas can change the world. Steve Jobs' life teaches us that even the darkest moments can lead to the brightest legacies. He started with nothing. He faced rejection, pain, and loss. And yet he became a legend, from zero to forever.